Preemptive slide. So I was born into old school journalism, so to speak. My parents met, married, conceived, and birthed me while they were at J School, IU, 1976. I grew up in the newsrooms where my mom was an editor, namely the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, where my mom was an editor for about 25 years or so. And my dad has been with the AP since the Associated Press since I was about 4. And when I was younger, he was based out of the Mexico City desk and would often send me little trinkets from his various assignments in Central and South America, which is how I came to be the only girl in the 6th grade with a pro-Sandinista keyring. You know, every day when I came home from school, I read the newspaper because it was a way to sort of keep up with my parents in a funny way. And that was also just something you did. That was how you were a person in the world, you know, even though I was in 5th or 6th grade. And so I came to journalism kind of through a back door. I started publishing my own magazine when I was 15. Back then it was Xerox. I made it at Kinko's. It was like, fanzine was like a blog, but on paper. This was the 90s. And it was about feminism and punk rock. And about 10 years later, when I started freelancing full-time, the reason that I got hired by people was that they were trying to bring in, you know, bloggy voices to the paper. How do we keep up with the internet? We get someone who's irreverent and snarky and doesn't write like they went to J School, and that was me, I suppose. And one of the things that I did a lot, and still do some, but particularly when I first started freelancing full-time about 5-6 years ago, was a lot of charticles and infographics and stories based in lists, because you know, a lot of the papers where I was working and doing things, they were trying to keep up with the internet, and that was their way of doing it. And I've written my fair share of charticles, you know, but to me, I was sort of depressed because I knew what I was displacing at these papers. You know, I have a lot of respect and a lot of nostalgia for long-form journalism. That's what I grew up reading. That's what I grew up around. And every once in a while, I actually got to write something that was longer than 300 or 400 words. And so, you know, writing all these charticles can be a little depressing. There's a reason that they don't give out Pulitzers for charticles, though I've tried. And so one of the things that is sort of, you know, it's depressing to see, you know, entire newsrooms of people laid off, especially when sometimes you're related to them, the people being laid off. And also the idea that, you know, in order to stay competitive, a lot of the papers where I work, I'm freelance. I write for about 9 different places to make my living. A lot of the places that I've worked and a lot of the magazines and publications that I read, in order to stay competitive, I write a lot in print, a lot of these places are trying to beat the internet at a game that the internet will forever win, you know, doing these sort of clunky ways to try to keep up. And it's depressing. It's depressing if you care about journalism to see this happening. And so there's a few bright spots, some things that are inspiring to me as a reader and inspiring to me as a writer, places that are saying, if this is new journalism, if this is how it's going to be, you know, fuck it. Count us out. This is not the game we want to play. If we're going to go out, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it how we want to do it. And those places are the recent redesign of Spin, which is a music magazine that's been around for about 20 years, mainstream publication. You can buy it at the airport. Rookie magazine, which is a recently launched website for and by teenage girls that is also, you know, they publish an annual hard copy digest called their yearbook. And the other is, oh my God, why am I blanking? The Chicagoan, which is a Chicago-based magazine that is comes out twice a year. That's sort of literary. And here's the things that they're doing, the ways that they're doing things differently. Rookie, though it's primarily a website, it's not inundating people. It has 3 posts a day, and they might be like a couple pictures. It might be 3,000 words long. It might be 300 words long. The Chicagoan, they are doing like multiple formats. There's like 4 different ways to subscribe to it. Spin went to being bi-monthly in print with crossover content through all of their various formats. And so while they're still sort of embracing nostalgic form, print, they're also doing sort of contemporary stuff too. But they all have a sort of nostalgia for old journalism that's inspiring, their redesign, their launch. So Spin went with a sort of boldness and irreverence that was what old Spin was known for. The Chicagoan is actually, they revived a magazine that existed sort of, before the Depression that was a ripoff of the New Yorker, essentially. And Rookie is inspired by Riot Girl fanzines, kind of like the ones I used to make, and the old teen magazine Sassy, which was very sort of voicey and irreverent and unabashedly feminist. So let's start with Spin. Redesigned Spin, for their guiding principle, they asked a question that I don't think really anyone is bothering to ask, which is, what can a magazine do that the web cannot or cannot do as well? And so they upgraded the paper quality. They went with a totally new format. It's matte. It's gorgeous looking. It doesn't look like anything else on the newsstand. It's literally a larger magazine. And they focused on doing photos and doing really bold graphics and telling stories visually. It feels substantial. It's not disposable, and it's collectible. It's something that you want to go and pick up and look through and save. And they focused on quality journalism, and using the same writers for the web and all their various formats, so that the web isn't like this, bootleg stepchild that's being written by interns, and the magazine is like, the journalism side. And they have a really unified editorial voice that really values truly great journalism in the long form. They also broadened their scope and went with wider culture stories and went international, whereas most of, the other music magazines and also music sites are just focusing on the American underground, American pop, that sort of thing. And they also cut their circulation by about a quarter, but their sell-through rate now is way higher. So people are reacting really well to the redesign. And it's gone from basically being this sort of, hip competitor to Rolling Stone to something that people, if you care about music, you are now picking up Spin. If music matters to you, if music journalism matters to you, certainly you are. So next, I'm talking about Rookie. So Rookie is a teenage magazine made by teenage girls, basically. Most of the staff is college age or under. And what they're doing differently is basically they are, I think for a lot of people, the last thing you expect teenage girls to be doing on the internet. It is really about appealing to teenage girl brains and their intellect. The other thing they're doing is really unconventional approaches to typical teen topics. What John Hamm is doing here is a popular feature on Rookie, which is called Ask a Grown Man, where teenage girls write in with their problems about teenage boys and say, like, explain this to us. He's actually answering a question that someone posed about farting in front of your boyfriend. So, heavy duty topics. But he is obviously flummoxed by this. But what Rookie gets right is, it has a really, really distinct editorial voice. And, they're also doing an unconventional form where they're taking the best writing from their site and then offering it as this heavy-duty book, and they're doing like a tour around it and doing like 30 cities where they're meeting with teenage girls and having different sort of like seminars and different, how-to things. And they're just taking a different, really uncynical route with what they're doing. Next, the Chicagoan. So the Chicagoan came about because the editor, J.C. Gable, he previously had another magazine, and he had this moment of clarity at a party that his previous magazine, was throwing for an advertiser in the Hollywood Hills. It was a big booze advertiser, and they had put together this fancy party. And he thought, what the fuck am I doing here? This is not why I started a magazine. And now for music and culture magazines, doing sponsored parties and crossover marketing kind of events and things to appease your advertiser and really tie in with, branding ideas and all this sort of stuff. That is absolutely status quo if you're at a music or culture magazine right now. And that was profoundly depressing to him, as it is to me as well. And he said, I'm done with this. And he starts this other magazine. Naturally, it has no advertising, and it's basically sold like a book. They're biannual, but you can get a story a week, various, they have apps and, deliver it to your Kindle or your iPad or whatnot, or you can read it online. They have like 4 or 5 different versions of various levels of subscription, so it's really, you can sort of adjust it. For their distribution model, because there's kind of a pitiful distro system for a smaller publication, they went with something that has sort of a lot of cultural capital right now. They are employing basically pop-up store / taking their cues from like artisanal burrito makers, and they have a truck. And you can follow the truck on Twitter and find out where they're going to be, and then go there and pay your $20 for the magazine. And their initial print run is like 5,000 or 10,000, and they've sold out of it, which is kind of crazy when you think that people are like going to a truck. I mean, it's sold at stores around Chicago. It's regional because it's really focused on the Midwest and giving a Midwestern perspective. It is, I think, trying to be a sort of a Midwestern answer to the New Yorker, much like its original version. And they are absolutely focused on doing a sort of journalism that you just don't, at a length that you do not see anywhere anymore, including sort of famously a 25,000 word oral history on Siskel and Ebert, which is hard to imagine being published anywhere else. And like Spin, it's collectible, it's substantial, like the Rookie yearbook, which is about to come out. It's this huge sort of digest, and you want to hold it, you want to read it. And the thing that all 3 of them have in common is that, they have a real commitment to long-form journalism when we're being told like that just doesn't exist. You're not going to write anything that's longer than 300 words. You're not going to write something that can't be explained in like a list or a graphic. And to me, that I really find that inspiring, and not just as a writer, but as a reader. And I know this is sort of the rare exception. This is not going to save like a newsroom full of jobs. It's also a more exciting prospect when you think about that all the bright young things coming out of journalism school right now are basically, if they can get a job, being relegated to covering like celebrity tweets as their beat, which is pretty fucking grim. So, what I like about these is that, like I said, they're not these 3 little digests, sort of, or, magazines, print magazines, are not gonna save journalism, but they might save part of it. And given that, a lot of the kids coming out of journalism school, they may have to start their own magazine to see the kind of journalism that they care about, to cover the sort of things that matter to them. And so what I like about these three things is that they're saying long-form journalism does not have to be a fantasy, and that these three magazines, what they are saying is that long-form journalism and quality journalism, it doesn't, it doesn't have to evade us. It doesn't have to be like this cynical thing evading us. It doesn't have to be like entirely the cynical, nostalgic vision that we can have a future that is worth reading. So that's it.